Good morning, everyone. And we apologize so much for we had a technical mishap that stopped us from being able to enter into our live right on time. So I apologize and I thank you so much for your flexibility today. And so I know some of you might have a limited time, but do not worry. You can catch the replay and watch it a little bit later if when you have time. So again, I appreciate your flexibility. And we're going to talk about leadership. And we know in leadership, things don't always go the way that we plan. And so we are going to bob and weave around this one. And so I got to tell you, you are in for a great conversation. But let me start off. I am Pay a Sample. I am the CEO of Peak Leaders Collective, where I really focus on empowering leaders to tap into their authenticity, to tap into their brilliance, and lead from a place where they're reflecting on their purpose. And so, in addition to doing leadership development, my areas of expertise are really tied to the individual leader, but also supporting the development of healthy teams, tapping into the power of culture, and building cultures of dignity and belonging. And so I'm excited to talk about this critical conversation. But before I bring on our amazing guest, if you've never heard me speak before, or this is your first time, it's really important for me to kind of talk to you about what I mean when I say leader, because I am on a mission to really break away and break down this idea that leader equates a role or leader equates position that you might have. I'm a firm believer that a leader is really around someone's heart posture. And that fact that you have been able to answer the call to serve and shape the potential of those around you. And so, with that, I'm thrilled. I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Jana Haywood, who is the founder of Illumin Solutions Group, and she brings with her a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge in her work in the athletics field and education, as well as HR. And she is a powerful advocate for leadership growth, and she is honestly just an amazing person. And so I'm excited to bring her on. And there she is. Awesome. So, Dr. Haywood, always so excited to have a conversation with you. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and about your work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for the invitation to share this space with you, Pia. I think the conversation is right on time, and I'm looking forward to getting into it a little bit here as we move forward. But as already stated, I'm Dr. Jana Haywood, and I have been in education for over 20 years now. Time is just flying by. The last 10 have been spent in administration. I've had a number of roles from pre-K through higher ed, and I'm currently working in central office space. But in addition to that, I'm so excited about leadership that I started a business called Illumin Solutions Group. And what we do in that space is support individuals, groups, and teams with igniting, inspiring, and empowering them to reach their goals from a strategic organizational standpoint. And so I work with student athletes at the collegiate level, professional athletes as they're transitioning into the workplace, and then parents who just have some outstanding questions around what it means to be guiding someone through scholarships and beyond.
Yes, awesome. Well, I'm excited. As I said to anyone listening, if you have not heard this woman speak, you are in for a treat. And a big plug to Love and Leadership. Later, I'm going to give you some time to kind of share more info, but that's been an amazing event in the St. Louis community. And so let's jump into this topic. Let's jump into this conversation. And if you are here again live, or if you're watching the replay, our goal is for you to be able to listen and engage in this conversation, but to be able to walk away with at least one new strategy or one new idea for you to try out and apply into your leadership. So as we think about this topic, we know that leadership is this balancing act. Like on one hand, we really want to create an environment where we feel like our people, the team, the staff that we support feels valued, feels supported, and they feel understood, while also needing to be able to maintain these high expectations so that we can drive results. And so for leaders, especially those of us in our, the first few years or the early years, this balance can feel pretty challenging. It can feel pretty difficult because you're not just managing these tasks or managing the things on your to-do list, but you're trying to shape culture, you're trying to build trust, you're trying to really establish who you are as a leader and your leadership identity. And so how you navigate this balance can really set the tone for your team's performance for years to come. And so that is why we're having this conversation. And then personally, I want to share just a little bit that this topic really resonates with myself, because a little bit of my kind of professional career. I was a classroom teacher, a coach within a building, principal, and now I get to do this coach with lots of different organizations. But I remember early on in my leadership, I kind of experienced kind of both ends in this leadership journey. Early on, I leaned heavily into the empathy side, and sometimes almost like avoided the hard conversations or difficult conversations that I needed to engage into. And as I realized in doing that, I really wasn't holding or I wasn't serving my team to their potential. And so again, having to learn to lead with both compassion, clarity, and these high expectations. So Dr. Haywood, I would love to hear from you. Like, why is this topic so important to you, and what do you see as some of the biggest challenges for rising leaders in this space?
Absolutely. So I too, as a young leader or a newer leader, had some similar challenges with balancing, but probably on the other side, because just bringing in my sports and athletic background, having clearly articulated goals and accountability in real time was
Mhm.
something I was very familiar and comfortable with. And I had to really try and focus on making sure that I was bringing the humanistic, empathetic lens into my leadership. But I would say that one of the things that I have discovered over the course of time is just the importance of being an effective communicator. I
Mhm.
would say there's probably no attribute that's more important or centered in leadership than your ability to communicate effectively with those that you have expectations of. And
Mhm.
so those constant reminders of why you are part of the team, what you're bringing to the table, and then how we have laid out our blueprint for accomplishing those goals.
Yes. I love that. And it's so interesting. And we didn't even talk about this before, the idea that we both kind of tended to go to the opposite sides. And so I'm excited to just kind of continue the conversation and bring the different perspectives that we bring. And also, like, I got to just shout out your jacket and white shirt game. Like, we didn't even play in it, but again, just excited to dig in. It's just a sign that we're supposed to have this conversation. So
Absolutely. You're looking good, Paya.
well, thank you so much. So as we think about leadership, and you've kind of alluded to some of this, I truly do feel like the world of work is shifting, it's changing, and I think there's a number of things that are kind of adding to this because I see that employees are really seeking out leaders who value their humanity and value like their dignity while also pushing them to grow. And so this idea of like leaders being able to be empathetic and balancing that with the expectations doesn't feel like it's a nice to have anymore. It's almost feel like it's essential for retaining talent, for driving results, and really creating these cultures of belonging. What are your thoughts as you think about just kind of the world of work shifting and what employees are seeking out?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it head on. We no longer have the ability to just tell people to do things because we said so. Certainly, folks are looking for work environments that are flexible and responsive to their overall well being.
Mhm.
And so, part of building a strong culture is having the ability to articulate and showcase that you have empathy present in every aspect of the work that you are doing together. And I keep stressing together because it's a partnership. So the organization certainly has recruited and hired individuals based off the talents that they identified. But our employees or the workforce, they're doing more research and far more selective around where they are going to ultimately say yes. And retention is important because every time someone walks out the door, then that's money that you've invested, but it also impacts the rest of the team. And
Yeah.
so just being an empathetic, compassionate leader and balancing those things is going to be critical if you want to continue to exist in this new world that we're in.
Yes. Yeah. And I think your perspective of what you see specifically right now and the role that you're in kind of can attest to what folks are saying in their coming and in their leaving. And so let's kind of start off, not start, continue because we're already in it. But kind of creating this common definition around empathy because again, I think we all kind of come with our preconceived ideas of what, when we're talking about empathy, what do we mean? Just for the listeners, I'm going to share some of my thoughts, and I want you to add to it. When we're talking about empathy, it's not the being too nice. It's not being soft, right? It's not being weak, because that is something I believed early on in my leadership. But I've come to understand that a leadership just does not equate to being kind or being too kind, but it's truly like understanding the unique individual on your team and understanding their challenges, understanding the context that they bring to the team, so that you can really guide them effectively. And so I see it as like this idea of like meeting people where they are, but not leaving them there, and seeing the potential in them, and challenging to meet them with the right support. Like, what would you add to that definition?
I guess I would just add that for me, it's looking through a humanistic lens and recognizing that every single day we show up a little differently. And so, some days I'm able to just knock it out the park because I'm on fire, got a good night's sleep, and everything worked perfectly well for me on my way into work. And then other days, there's a traffic jam. My kids were late to school. Maybe I forgot my laptop and I needed that for the first meeting. And so I need my teammates to step in and to offer me a little bit of grace, and also just stepping in and filling the gap. And I guess I'll think about sports again in that way, because on a sports team, you understand that not every day is somebody going to make, record breaking points or rebounds, but we still have the ultimate goal of winning. And so that's true in our organizational spaces too.
Yes, yes, that people side, that human side. And so if you're listening, like, that is important for you to hold on to. That, again, empathy doesn't mean you're lowering the standards. It's about meeting people and seeing them as people, kind of where they are, and taking into consideration, like, the idea of like stepping into their shoes, stepping into their experience, and really kind of tapping into like, how can I use that in ways to grow my own understanding and connection with them, and also providing support to help with those challenges. And so I love that, kind of this shift around the looking at the human side, the people side. And so let's kind of get into what this looks like, the practicality around leading with empathy while also holding folks to a high standard. Again, when I was coaching teachers as a principal, I had to learn that listening to their struggles or creating space to hear what they might be challenged with or struggling with didn't have to mean that I'm compromising their expectations, but being able to find ways to support them to reach those expectations. And so I would love to hear from you. What are like an example of, from your work, from your experience, even maybe your time as a child or a student, where you saw this played out effectively, like a story of a leader who got this balance just right, or some strategies that you saw that leaders did to be able to hold both?
Yeah, so I remember being a new professional. So not even as like the leader, but a new professional. I was also a new mom. And so I understood my role assignment and the identity of the organization and the work that we were doing. But I also understood I have to drop my baby off at the daycare in the morning. So unless I can do this successfully, I'm not going to be able to bring my full self into the workspace. And so my supervisor was able to make some concessions that didn't violate policy, but also really stated to me that I was valuable. And so, in understanding that, it actually improved my performance, I believe, in the workplace, because this person was willing to go the extra mile for me through an empathetic lens of having been there, done that. I raised children myself. So I'm going to make space for you. But then also saying, you have to make sure that you're moving your students forward data wise, because we still have to make sure that our school is accredited and our kids need to make sure have the mastery of those standards. And so I think that was a great example for me early on of there are multiple ways to get to a result. You don't have to have it just so structured and stringent that people are turned off from being a part of, the goals that you want to accomplish.
Mhm. What did that leader do? So you said they created this space, but there
Mhm.
had I imagine there had to be a conversation at some point, right? Whether you went to that leader or they reached out to you. Give us a little bit more of like a picture of like that the interchange of that conversation.
Yeah, so I would say for that particular example, there had already been some front loading of expectations. So with any job, you have a job description, your work hours. And then it was for me to kind of open that conversation and say, hey, I really want to do a good job. I'm really committed to the vision of this school. However, I'm having this challenge. And so I think what the leader did was listen, like honestly and open-heartedly to what I was saying, gave me a chance to prove that I was going to back up my commitment investment into the work. And I think that's a framework that we all as leaders can follow and can learn from. before we jump to assumptions or draw conclusions, step back and listen. Because often people will tell you what they need, and you can determine if you're going to be able to provide that for them. But then we also can really begin to see, if I can't offer that, what can we offer, and how can we accomplish the same goal a different way?
Yes. Yes. I think when I hear you talk about that listening side, it even makes me think about times when I've had to do similar, right? Like when I knew what the expectations were, because they were
Mhm.
communicated often and regularly.
Yes.
But I knew something was kind of getting in the way.
Mhm.
Um, Being able to go to that leader and truly feel heard. And I think instead of like talked at or talked down, I feel like that leader just really created space and heard me and gave me an opportunity to kind of share what it is that I'm struggling with. And so, yeah, do you want to say any more about that?
Just that, and then the follow up, because I think that's the part that sometimes gets lost in the balancing act. So once you, as the leader, have listened, you have accommodated, now you need to follow up to ensure that the individual isn't maybe pushing past the boundary that you just created. Because
Mm,
I do think that that is a delicate dancing act. Once you've given a little bit of flexibility, um, most people will stay within the boundaries, right? But then there are some who are going to say, "Oh, well, if they were willing to negotiate that, perhaps I can go a little bit further." And
mm,
so, just that check-in is a recommitment or a restatement of, we are allowing this, but maybe not necessarily additional things.
yes. Okay. So I'm hearing that a couple of effective strategies you heard were like leader being able to first communicate what the expectation was. And then
Mhm.
once you went to that leader listened effectively, listened and really kind of connected with who you are, your experience, and heard whatever you're asking to. And then that third piece is also like following up and that accountability. Because you're right, that is a huge piece that is needed in leadership. We can't just set the standard and then never hold someone to it or follow up on it because then that communicates something different.
Yes.
So I love those ideas. I love those three specific strategies that you've named and outlined for us. Another strategy that I would add to that, um, and yeah, I would add to that, and I want to hear your thoughts because my brain's going into like I wonder what that leader did for you in these pieces. Um, but I think it's really important that we know our folks and really spend some time um, building relationships first, right? I
Mhm.
think again, when we equate leadership to just a role or a position, I think some people just get into the task, the things I have to do. But I have found that it is extremely important for leaders to know each and every one of their staff members or their team or colleagues, whatever that looks like, and really taking the time to understand them as individuals, right? Understanding what motivates them, understanding their strengths, understanding their goals, understanding why they said yes to the role that they are in, right?
Yes.
Especially if you are the new person on the block, right? So
Mhm.
I can remember when I stepped into my leadership role. And so you come into a leadership role, there's already folks on the team. And I remember intentionally setting aside time to do one-on-ones with everyone that was on staff who wanted to do that. And I kind of created different opportunities to do it. It could be like come to my office, we can chat
Mhm.
here. I also gave them an opportunity like we can go to coffee, or I can come in your classroom because I was in a school and I will help you with your bulletin boards and our chat will just happen during that time. But
Mhm.
really just use that time. It was actually amazing because of how much I learned about each and every one of them. And
Mhm.
that insight that I gained about each person kind of set me up to be able to offer some really personalized support, really kind of tailored to those individuals. And so I felt like that was invaluable information that I wouldn't have gotten in a survey. I wouldn't have gotten in, picked up in just the day to day. No, truly, for one, communicating this is important to me.
Mhm.
I'm going to allow you a variety of ways for it to happen. My office, coffee shop, your classroom. And then I had just a few little, questions and just allow the conversation to organically take place. And knowing that um, those pieces about the folks early on allowed
Mhm.
me to enter into those conversations. Maybe one of was more challenging, having known a little bit more about their story. Um,
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that what I would what I think about in this moment is those unintentional touches and then those intentional touches. Because
Yeah.
I think as a leader, sometimes our days get really busy. And so you have to be intentional around spending time with the people that are a part of your team. And
Yeah.
so when you're having those conversations too, to just really be present with them. So not something that feels robotic. So when you were doing the bulletin boards and you're hearing about what's going on in their life, I think what became really magical in terms of building those relationships down the line is the next time you see that person, if they were telling you a story about their child or if they were telling you about something that happened in the classroom, to restate that in the next touch, because that just feels like, oh, she was really paying attention. She's
Yes.
invested. And so it takes practice though, because we have so many competing things in our world. Like noise is just a constant, and
Yes.
so we have to learn to still ourselves and be with who, where we are and with whom we're with.
Yeah.
So I love that. So I think you're right on the money with that for
Yeah.
relationships.
And I even like I always tell people like I'm a brain nerd, not a brain expert, so I don't pretend like I know all the terms and all that. But I love reading, and I'm just fascinated about our brain and how do we kind of tap into that and all the work that we do. But even like research shows like a key way to really build nah, let me go back for a second. When we have these like these connections with individuals, right? So when
Mhm.
I feel connected to you, like if you remember my kid's name and you ask about my kid later, it creates this like connection between the two of us. And then the thing that happens within our brains is no, I'm no longer like searching for a threat. I'm now
Yeah.
feeling connected. And the
Mhm.
amygdala part of my brain is kind of like, calm down. This is a safe person. Chill out. Right. And so I can fully engage in the conversation. And again, there's so much research that even talks about like, and when we are in these connected relationships, it allows us to be more innovative in our thinking. It allows us to think outside of the box. It allows us to kind of tap into some higher cognitive thinking, like all these things that are amazing that happens. And we don't think about how important that is for the adults, right? And so remembering the kid's name or the birthday or these small pieces of information are key. And exactly, I'm in the classroom doing the bulletin board. As soon as the meeting was over, I went down and wrote down, trying to remember as much as I could, so that I can intentionally kind of hold on to those pieces and check in. Um, and when you even said like the noise, the amount of noise that we are hearing in the world, that we have to be intentional. So I would use my calendar and put like reach out to so and so on my calendar because I knew if I didn't write it down, it wasn't gonna happen. And so those are some tools that as leaders we can use to allow us to kind of help build those relationships and those connections.
Yeah, no, the calendar piece is key because we have so many moving parts. And I even encourage people, we talk about the importance of culture. And so if it's important, I'm like, it needs to be on the calendar. So
Mhm.
it's okay to put some um, times where you're going to have break bread together. Maybe you're going to have a staff luncheon on a certain day. And based off the cadence of your calendars, that this is a really important time to connect, or intentionally saying, I'm going to stop by Pay's classroom on this day because I know that from last year, maybe she lost a loved one. And so those things that will help to cohese the team, so that when you're looking at accountability, because again, we're not giving up one for the other. It makes those conversations a lot easier. And people tend to perform at a higher level in spaces where, since you talked about like just the brain research, where they feel safe, where there is a sense of belonging, there's just going to be a peak or some spikes to their performance when they know they can trust that what you're saying is for the greater good and not something just selfishly beneficial. Like
Mm.
this is for the community.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And I love like you don't have to give up one for the other. I just want to repeat that because I heard you name it for anyone listening. Like you don't. There are ways for us to be able to kind of hold on to both of these pieces. And so I want to go back to the kind of the first strategy you named when you were giving that example of your leader, when you talked about the communicating and communicating the expectations clearly, like often and consistently. And I think as rising leaders, I think one of the key pieces I would say is we often have to communicate two, three times more than we think we need to. There were times that I assumed that people knew the expectations that I set because I told them once in the onboarding process, or was in the handbook, right? Like, and we can't rely on that, right? We are forgetful beings, we are forgetful creatures. And also we when we communicate it more often, more on a consistent basis, it lets people know that that is important to us. And so I would um, encourage like new leaders, rising leaders, to create a cadence for communicating those things on a regular basis. Um, I can even think back to, like, I remember when you were sharing your story about having to drop the kid off on time and those pieces. I
Mhm.
remember once working with a teacher who was struggling to meet the standard of being to work on time every day, right?
Mhm.
So now, mind you, I've done some relational pieces. I've kind of done those pieces, and so I remember going into the teacher's classroom and just starting off not just with like, "You're not here on time," but even saying like, "I really want to connect with you about your recent arrival times. I know
Mhm.
life can throw us curveballs, myself as well. Things kind of make it hard to get to work on time, and it can be challenging. And so, is there anything going on that's making it challenging for you to be here at the start of the day?"
Mhm.
So starting with curiosity, once
Yes.
I have that expectation set, rather than starting with judgment, right? And I have found like my heart's posture shifts because I went in, I'm going in thinking, oh,
Mhm.
all this. And as that teacher opened up, I realized there was way more going on than what I imagined. And so, yes, I communicated it clearly and often. And then when I saw it wasn't being met, I had to kind of go and start with that curiosity piece.
Yeah, I mean, care is key too. You
Yeah.
want to, if you're saying your community, then you should care about the people that are part of the community.
Yes.
And so being able to listen and through curiosity helps them to recognize, okay, I'm not just like in trouble. We're trying to be solution
Mm,
oriented as well because people are dependent on you. So it doesn't matter
yeah.
if you're in a school setting, a business setting, a sports team. If you've made a commitment, those individuals around you are depending on you, and we want to make sure that you're okay. Number one, so that's the care
Mhm.
piece. But then, what can we do to ensure that you're able to meet that mark? And so I think about the conversations too, as something that I've learned. It's okay being personable without necessarily being personal, because I think that that's a wire that we have to learn, like a tightrope that you walk. Because
Mhm.
some people are mature enough to handle the personal, but then some aren't there yet. And so as you're building that relationship, you'll begin to understand which one they are, how are they showing up in that professional space, so that you can be empathetic, but also again, the balance of accountability.
Yes, yes. And so I'm just going to summarize because I'm right. I got my pen because I was like, gotten some really great ideas. So as we're thinking about ways to balance this compassion with the high standard, like we talked about, like knowing your people, taking the time out to connect with them, to show them that you care, to know who they are individually is a key piece. Communicating those clear expectations regularly and consistently. And so creating this cadence of communicating what it is that you're asking of the person, whether it's a getting to work on time or whether it's a here are the outcomes that I expect in the program you're working on. You get to kind of fill in the blank, but communicating those expectations clearly and often. Another one is like the listening. So what does it look like to just pause, listen, and ask questions truly from a place of curiosity as opposed to a place of judgment? And then with that, and I want to come back to that, like that follow up, right? And so, how do we
Mhm.
continue to create some follow up and accountability? And I think sometimes, especially when we have that conversation, bringing like tying it up with that, right? So tying up the end of the conversation, like once you've co-constructed what they need from you, simply saying, all right, how about we check in about this next week to see how things are going? I'm here to support you, but I trust you're going to make the steps necessary to make this adjustment, right? So building that accountability into a part of the conversation, and then put it on your calendar, because we are not going to do it if we don't put it on our calendar. And so using that calendar to help us to create that cadence, to kind of follow up, check in, but also just to kind of build those relationship pieces. Um,
So I know we won't be able to share all our strategies in this
yeah.
short amount of time, but I do want to just plug this around those tough conversations
Mhm.
around accountability while still being able to maintain an empathetic lens. I
Mhm.
think that something I have found to be really, really beneficial is either to have scripted out
Mhm.
what my conversation is going to look and sound like, because I have a relationship with the individual. so that you can still get through it, because it can be difficult to have a tough conversation with someone that you've already shown up for and said, with that amount of care. So having a script. And I think the other last nugget that I would say is, if you have the opportunity to role play with someone else prior to, without jeopardizing somebody's confidentiality, obviously, or privacy, but for you to already have just gone through it a couple times with someone else before you go in and have that tough conversation, because you don't want to destroy or undo all the work that you've done to build that trusting community, but you still have to get to the heart of the work and what the expectations and goals are in those roles. And so those two things have really helped me when I've had to have some difficult conversations.
I am so glad you added those, because those are critical. The scripting piece, I think people, I use scripts for lots of different things, right? And I think people look at scripts and think like, oh, it's not authentic, it's not this. But I think what it allows, especially the script coupled with the role play, it allows you to experience the emotions that you are going to feel prior to, like, when you're not in the moment, not in the game, right? It's like the pre-game, right?
Yes.
So you go through it and you kind of get through the emotional pieces, because the last thing you want to do, I think, when we have to have a hard conversation where you're kind of giving someone feedback with a scene or they're not meeting, or kind of putting something in place, because you don't want to have to now deal with those emotions for the first time and then become emotionally reactive to maybe what comes up from that person. And so I'm so glad that you named those two. So the scripts are key and necessary, and then the role play for sure. So what advice would you give to a leader who's kind of like, I'm not sure. I don't know how I feel about the role play. I don't know how I feel about the script. Like, what advice would you give them about that?
Yeah, I didn't know how I felt about it either. So until I actually started practicing it. And like most things in our life, practice does improve how you will present and perform. And so definitely I would say with someone that you trust, because the first couple times out the gate, it can be uncomfortable. But over time, you won't have to do it as much because you have more practice. But you will see and notice, I did, that the very things that I predicted showed up. It's just like a lesson plan with students. You think about that student that's going to be over there doing whatever they should or should not be doing, and how you're going to draw them back into the conversations and get back on topic. And I think that that's important, because tough conversations are emotional. The person on the other side is experiencing emotions. And so you want to be able to still accomplish the goal or objective of the meeting while leaving some space to hear and to listen, but to articulate, now we must, based off of this evidence and this data, begin to move forward. So yeah.
And I'm glad you named that. And I also think that the nervousness, all those pieces that are just natural to come up, it actually also shows that we care. So back to that human side of like all the pieces, is like, we're not robots in this. And when you do start to understand and know someone's story, understand who they are, because you spent that time building the connection, you do want to make sure you are being intentional about how you engage in those conversations. And so I think using those scripts, practicing, predicting what that person might feel, or how they might respond on the other side. And again, it's engaging, walking into those conversations with a heart posture of curiosity. And I'm here to support, rather than I'm here to find out why you're wrong. And I'm going to it's a gotcha. Like, no one wants that for anything. Right?
No. And I think we can honor people's humanity in pretty much everything we do. Like, I just believe that the dignity and worth of a human, it should always be prioritized, even when you have to say something that maybe they don't want to hear, or that's going to be hard to hear. Yeah. So this process is just about really what I think leadership is about. Like, if you can't treat people well, then you may not be the person that should be leading.
Yeah. Right? Because you're in the business of people.
Yes.
The care and the support and the development of the folks around you. So no, this is good. And as always, I can keep talking to you for hours. I told you I can keep chatting, but I do want to get to a couple of the questions that came in. Hopefully, I think we might have time for one or two of these questions. And one of the questions we kind of already alluded to a little bit is, like, how do we build trust while giving constructive feedback. And I'll share, and then I want to hear your thoughts. And I would say to this question is the trust has to begin to be built before you give that constructive feedback. If you're walking into a conversation with someone like, okay, I have to have this hard conversation. What can I do? Like, that's the first time we're thinking about trust. I would say like you're kind of behind, you're behind on that. And so it's one of the first things that I would say leaders need to be thinking about when you get into that role, right? You are leading people. This is a people-centered role. Like what you're doing is working with people. And we have to be able to establish some of that trust beforehand. And I think what you said, like we talked about understanding, knowing who they are, the connections, the things we might have in common, tapping into that. Another way that I don't always think leaders think about as a way we build trust is with our competency. When we show up as competent individuals, when we show up that we know our stuff and we know when we don't know something, right? When I'm able to confidently say, this is what I'm really good at, this is my jam, I'm not so great at this, I'm going to tap into this person over here. That actually builds trust for the team, for your staff, for your colleagues. And so I would say that we have to be thinking about building trust with those folks before those hard conversations or those constructive feedback conversations take place, but kind of early on in the game when you're, getting started in your role. Would you add anything to that question?
I just would say the trust is earned, and it takes time to earn someone's trust. But I think consistently showing up in the space in the manner that you say you will help you to build it, maybe, and even microwave it a little faster than maybe if you don't have a lot of time. I think you're right. Our competencies definitely speak for themselves. And as a leader, you're accepting a role. And so people are always observing your behavior. So how you treat everyone matters, and how you show up in all the spaces, it matters when you're trying to establish trust.
Yes. You are under a microscope. Folks are watching you, right? And so the way you respond to that individual, whether someone, like, you have to pay attention to all those pieces.
Yeah.
And so I think that is critical as we think about trying to engage in these conversations. So awesome. Okay, we got one other question. Pull it up. Sorry. All right. I think we kind of answered this one a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. How do I communicate high expectation in a way that motivates rather than discourages? So how do I communicate high expectations in a way that motivates rather than discourages?
Yes, you're trying to kick it to me first. I think that
you can kick it back if you need to.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that motivation comes from results, and so we have high expectations. But if we're celebrating our results along the way, then I'm gonna be more motivated to show up and work harder the next day. It's sports world, business world, personal life. If I don't see any results behind my actions, then it's gonna start ticking down. But if I'm seeing the results, I'm going to feel a little more motivated.
Yes. And I would add, like, the result, showing the appreciation and saying, wow, I see you doing this thing, right? When you see they're working toward it. I would even add, like, in the moment of the conversation. So go back to the example of the person that wasn't there on time. And I had to have this, difficult conversation with that. And it's not you. It wasn't you. No, I'm joking. We haven't crossed paths there yet.
Yes.
But I would even say, like, in that conversation, listening to that teacher, hearing what they name, once they've shared what they have communicated what's going on, even saying, like, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Thank you so much for trusting me with that information. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your dedication despite these challenges, right? And in that moment, even saying, you are such an asset to this team. And I want to make sure that you are set up for success. So it's not about a gotcha. It's about, because I see something in you and I want to do everything that I can to make sure you succeed. Right. Yes. So naming that, and then moving into and at the same time, being on time. It's important for you. It's important for your students. It sets the tone for the day. So let's work together to figure out what this might look like. Yeah. And then as I see that person, and I did, when I saw this person getting there on time, it might have been like the first time, I'm like, high five in the hallway. You're knocking it out. This is great. Look at you. I'm loving this. But again, encouraging that piece when we give them that positive feedback, like I see you, not just when you're not making it on time, but I see you
Mhm.
when you are doing the right thing. And I think we as leaders get stuck in the idea of like, oh, are my high performers or the people that are they're doing it that they're supposed to be. I don't need
Mhm.
to tell them. I don't need to let them know. No, we do. It sends this message of I see you, I value you, you are appreciated here. And so, yeah, I would add that piece to that question around um, how do we communicate those high expectations in a way that's encouraging and motivating versus discouraging for sure.
Yes. Yeah, it just made me think about if American society, sometimes we can become so fixated on the negative or the deficits, that we miss like what makes people special and
Mhm.
unique. And so having that asset-based approach that you just talked about and valuing that and naming it and bringing it into the room, into the forefront, I think does support people being having a safe space to improve in other areas. I go back to sports again. I was really fast and can jump really high. And so during games, that's what I focused on. If you wanted me to dribble with my left hand, I would be very frustrated if that's all you talked about. Like, talk about how high I can jump and how fast I can run. So we can apply that into the work world as well.
I love that. Yes, yes. And I don't think we've ever talked because I don't ever bring it up with you about my time in basketball because it was rough. I was fast and I was aggressive.
Uh,
But we can talk about that at another time. But for sure, yes, like tap into what they're doing well,
mhm.
communicate that, let them know you see those pieces. Awesome. All right. Well, as we start to wrap up, I would love for you to share with us what is a final piece of advice that you have for a new leader who's really trying to work on growing this balance.
Well, of course, I'm going to say get a coach because I think that having someone who's right there with you in real time who can offer strategies such as some of the ones we've already shared today is very, very beneficial. I also think that having informal and formal mentorship arrangements can be really important as a young leader. Someone who's willing to go out to dinner with you and you can just ask those questions curiously without the evaluative lens because supervisors are great, but there's always still that super evaluative hat that can get in the way. And then just be patient and graceful with yourself as well. It takes time and practice, and some of it's trial and error. None of us are perfect, and I
Right.
think the moment we can say that I'm not perfect, it opens our heart to seeing other people's imperfections as an opportunity to grow because I want people to make space for me to be better. And so I have to make space for others to be better as well.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I would similar in what you said advice, finding a space where you can take off the
Mhm.
mask. I think we, as leaders, we know that there is a piece to it that is like you are expected to show up in a certain way, and
Mhm.
that is real, right?
Yeah.
Um, and also, you have to have a space where you can take off the mask and be able to talk about some of the pieces that you're struggling with or where you need support. And so, whether that's with a coach, whether that is with a mentor or another group of leaders, I would encourage new leaders like you have to find that space. And oftentimes, you have to advocate for yourself for that space. I
Mhm.
remember early on, I with one of the roles I took, I was like, all right, as part of me taking the role, I need a coach. And they said, sure. And they never followed up. Right. And so then it became like I had to take ownership of that and do the work of reaching out
Mhm.
and finding that support. And so I would say, yes, creating that, finding a space where you can take off the mask. And then the second piece is celebrate your progress. Right. We are our own worst critic. And so, what does it look like to regularly find time where you pause and say, wow, look at where I was and look at where I am. Look at the growth that I'm making. And so, that is advice that I would give to any new leader trying to figure these out. Like Dr. Haywood said, you're not going to get it right the first time. You're probably going to fail quite a bit, but you're going to be learning in that process and then celebrating when you are making the growth and the change that you hope to see. And so as we wrap up, if today's conversation resonated with people and they want to keep talking to you, Dr. Haywood, and they want to explore topics, where can they find you? How can they find you?
Oh, well, I am on all social media platforms. And so LinkedIn, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, where we are today,
Mhm.
Jana Haywood, but also we have our website, Illumin Solutions Group, ISG.com. And so I would love to further the conversation and connect with you if you see some value, and even if you just want to have a small conversation. So please reach out.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm telling you, if you reach out to her, you will not regret it. And so, for those of you, if you're thinking, yes, you want to continue having the conversations, I just want to kind of share my contact information as well here on LinkedIn. Obviously, if you are here, you found me on LinkedIn some way, somehow. But my website, peakleaderscollective.com. I'm also on Instagram. But just like Dr. Haywood would say, would love to just jump into a conversation and kind of hear what your goals are, hear where you're trying to go, and kind of see if we feel like we are a good fit as a thought partner, as a coach, to be able to walk alongside you. And so I want to just thank everyone. Dr. Haywood, thank you so much again, like for joining me and for, oh yes, go ahead, say it. I got my
get your book, Move It Out the Ball, on Amazon.
Yes, book. Yeah. Yes, and also real quick before I wrap up, Love and Leadership. Tell them about the event that's coming up in just a couple of weeks, I think.
Absolutely. Would love to see you at Love Letters, Leader to Leader, at Masterclass on Mentorship, February 22nd at the Del Mar Divine. It's on Eventbrite if you'd like to get more information.
Yes, awesome. So yes, definitely go there if you can make it. And so again, thank you for spending your time with us. And I hope that you are leaving with some practical insights, some encouragement on your journey. We shared lots of strategies to start with understanding your people, knowing your people, communicating clear expectations, listening, follow up, making sure that accountability is there, and using your calendar to help you with that, scripting conversations and role playing those conversations. So I'm hoping you're walking away with a practical way that you can try and implement into your leadership. And I just want to remind you that this leadership is not about perfection. It is not about being the best version of yourself 100% of the time. It is about being intentional and making intentional steps toward making progress, and as well as being an authentic leader. And so I just want to remind you that balancing empathy with high expectation is important. It is critical, and it is possible as you are thinking intentionally to do that. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Haywood, again, thank you so much. And reach out if you have any questions or want any follow-up. Take care.